So today we're going to hear from somebody exciting. But before we start, I want you guys to use the chat button. Tell us where you're from, where you are, and why you're here, your organizations. We just want to hear a little bit about that so that this can help feed some of the discussions that we'll have later. Don't be shy because it's all part of the exercise. So your name, location. I see we have somebody from China. That's very exciting. I'm going to ask that everybody mutes a little bit so that we can be a little bit respectful of the different people and listening. So UK, we have Kenya, we have China. So this is kind of a very, very international community, global community. We have South Africa, welcome. We have Mauritius, very exciting. South India. So great. We have a very diverse crowd with very diverse tensions and interests. So Uduak, you have some exciting people that are here to learn from you. So we're so happy that you could join us. We'll tell you more about Catalyst as we go along, more interactions, and we want to make this a very, so make sure you're not shy, even though it's virtual and one way. I can see we have people from Nigeria finding us in music, very unique platforms. So welcome again. And before we kick off, I'm going to have Cherry to read the bio of our speaker before she comes on.
All right, thank you everyone for joining. We have an amazing speaker today. She's Udwa Kamimo. She's the founder of Udwa Kamimo Coaching and Consulting. She's also an executive coach, facilitator, and also a trainer where she works with individuals and organizations. And she has a career of over 20 years in the media field, where she's been working with organizations such as BBC, Citizen TV in Kenya, and also in the United States, United Kingdom, as well as Ethiopia. She also founded Ramani Life Group, which offers career guidance to students in low income secondary schools in Kenya. She is also she is also the founder of the Comstable, which is a professional development program for young communicators. Udwa Kamimo has a MA in Communications and Public Affairs, and she is also has a BA in International Relations. She is also currently pursuing a business and organizational psychology. She is also a fellow with Bloomberg ALI Media Foundation. She is also a Tutu Fellow, as well as Aspen Global Leadership Network Fellow. She is also the chairperson of the advisory board of Baraza Media Lab, and also a board member of Junior League Nairobi. So we welcome our speaker, Udwa, and we are hoping to have an interactive session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Going to start sharing the slides.
Can we also spotlight Uduak before the slides come up, so that we can single her out and everybody can really, because the profile is befitting, but we need to make some recognition so that when we see her in the airport or on the big stage, we'll be able to come over and say hi. So thank you, Uduak, for being here today. We appreciate it. We value your contribution, and we're so excited to have you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Wando, for the warm welcome. Cherry, thank you for the, summarizing my background as you did. Before we get started, I'd like to ask your participants to enter into the chat box one word to describe why you or your organization might need a communication plan, because that's what we're talking about, communication planning. So, why do you think you or your organization needs a communication plan? So while you do that, what Cherry said about me is true. I am a recovering journalist. I found that I prefer speaking to people like yourselves who are making a difference in the world, over speaking to politicians and other people who make our lives much more difficult. So that's one. It's true that I'm concerned about public affairs, and I moved over into the world of coaching and training and facilitation because very often a lot of us who are passionate about changing the world rarely have the resources and the space that we need to sustain the hard work of laboring on the front lines of social change. So that's part of what I'm doing on this side. So it's a pleasure to be with you. It's a pleasure to share what I know, what I've experienced over some 20 or so years of work in the media and crossing over into communications, which, when I was studying to be a journalist, we were taught was the dark side. But I've since, grown up and figured out that it isn't the dark side. So let me just see what comments are coming in about communication planning, visibility, exposure, effectiveness, awareness. Great. So we're all on the same page. Part of the reason why we need communication plans as individuals and organizations is reputation management. You're quite right. Visibility. It's also to help us let people know what our vision is and mobilize people, rally them around our vision, which is why Vanessa is right. Fundraising. How do you get donors to give you money, your supporters to share resources with you if they don't know who you are and what you're doing? But the other thing, and that speaks to external communication, but there's also internal communication, rallying your own team members, your beneficiaries around executing what you say you will do, your strategy or whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So if we could go to the next slides, please. So what I'd like you to do, and I hope you came in with notebooks and pens and papers, because my hope is that by the end of this session, you will have a draft communication plan for yourself or your organization, right? And so we're talking about how to create a communication plan, and the elements that we need to, stay on the next slide. The elements that we need to speak to, which include defining the problem. We will move on to people, and then we will put it all together. And so to begin with, we need to understand what our organization's goal is. And sometimes we can be so passionate about changing the world that we jump in and throw everything at the problem, but we don't define the problem very clearly. But I'm hoping that by this point, everyone here has an organization which has a mission or a vision, because your organization goal is derived from that. It reflects your vision, your mission, the change you want to see in the world, and how you're going to effect that change. And so we as communicators come in by taking that goal and refining it, tweaking it just a little bit to turn it into an objective. And what that means for us on this side of the table is that we attach numbers to it, because we want to, gauge at the end of all of this whether we've been effective. And then we work out what problem we're trying to resolve, whether it's fundraising, whether it's visibility, whether it's, mobilizing collaboration, as Sanjay says, whether it's amplifying our work. But our communication plan will be very specific to everything you've put down in the chat, because a plan is specific to a set of initiatives, whereas a strategy is much broader. So a plan would always be part of a strategy. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide. So for example, our organization goal. I looked at some of your organizations and some of the things they're doing, and this kind of roughly reflect some of the things people are trying to do: increase the number of volunteers in the community, increase access to primary health care for children, ensure that farmers get, good and fair prices for their produce. So that would be the goal. And again, remember that it reflects the vision and the mission. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, what I've done here actually, is I've taken the goal on the left column and I've turned it into a communication objective. So for instance, where you've talked about increasing the number of volunteers in the community, we have said that by this time in 2023, we want to ensure that 50% of the community is regularly volunteering, okay? If we take the goal of increasing access to primary health care for children under the age of 10, we say by this time next year, or it could be in 2 years, we want to ensure that all children under 10 living in country X, community Y have completed all their vaccinations. If we take the goal of ensuring that farmers get good and fair prices for their produce, we'll say that by 2023, which was my default 1 year, register 70% of farmers in location Y and supply them with daily market rates. So I hope that's clear how we translate a goal into an objective, right? So let's move on. The next thing we're going to try and do is unpack the problem that our communication plan is trying to resolve. And that means if we say that we are going to ensure that children under 10 in location Y have to be immunized, we have to explain our rationale for addressing this problem, which is that, community Y has no young people because they all die before they reach the age of 10. So we're trying to address that. And I'm being a bit simplistic here, but you understand what we're trying to do. Why must we be, doing this work? Why do we need to ensure that farmers have access to fair prices? Because we find that, producers of chocolate, of cocoa, produce at a far higher price than they, get in return for their produce. And yet we know that on the world market, for instance, cocoa from a certain location is a premium product. So essentially what we're trying to understand and come to grips with here is the rationale, the hypothesis. We're getting to why we're doing this work, and why it's important, why we must do it, why we're the best people to do it. All right. If there are any questions, or if I'm losing you, please say so in the chat. Thank you. So Cherry, move on to the next slide, please. And so with that brief introduction, the first part of communication planning, which is defining your purpose, your problem, I'd like you all to go into breakout groups, which Cherry and the team from Catalyst will help us with. And what I'd like you to do very quickly, you've only got 10 minutes, is to discuss the communication challenges your organization is facing, answer the 3 questions with respect to your organization, and assign someone to report back to us when we come into plenary. And so the questions, I'll encourage you to take a screenshot of this or take a picture so you don't lose this. What is your organization's goal? Derive communication objectives from that goal, and then answer the question of the problem the communication plan that we're going to work on here is trying to solve. Okay, so taking your existing organization goal, derive communication objectives from it, and come up with the problems, the communication plan you're trying to resolve, respond to that. Okay, thank you. So I'll hand over to the Catalyst team to put you all into breakout rooms. And what I will do is I will stalk you. I will jump around like a butterfly from one group to the other to ensure that we are all on the same page. Is that all right?
Yes. Great. So everybody will be automatically moved to different rooms, and we hope everybody will be open and objective and be able to co-create together. Thank you. So just click join and you'll be transported to another room.
Hi guys, welcome back. I wasn't able to stalk all the groups, but let's give everyone a minute to come back. Do we have everyone back, Jerry?
I believe we do.
Okay, excellent. So, but I did hear some really interesting problems. Would anyone like to share what they heard from their group members in terms of goals and challenges that they're trying to resolve? Sure. I mean, don't follow all. There we go. I thought I had to mobilize the enthusiasm. Okay, Linda, please go ahead.
Okay, so I think it's difficult because we all obviously come from different organizations, and so we'll be slightly different in our goals and objectives. And in terms of specifics, which is what your objectives of your communication goals, Olivia was very specific, which was quite nice, about what he is, what they are wanting in terms of actual figures and that sort of thing. But I think overall it was really about wanting exposure, increasing audience, educating people about what we're doing, and yeah, and sort of, yeah, sorry, I hope that sort of summarizes it, guys.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Just to highlight what Olivier used the term like building social capacity in our group. And I think that that was a really useful term because he brought up that some of us are trying to build, you know, money-based capacity, people-based capacity, but I found that a really useful term that he shared with us.
Building social capital.
Capacity.
Capacity. Olivier, where are you? Please help me understand what you mean by building social capacity.
Hello. I was just telling them that most of organizations, they are just targeting. We are targeting in life, in normal life, to increase the social capacity. So I mean, social capital. So by increasing social capital, that's when we just target the three birds at once. The first bird is the beneficiary that you're serving. Second is the stakeholders that will be speaking for you. The third one would be the internet space. So actually, that's what for me on my side, I believed that would be my social capital. Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. No, Isabel, I asked for that clarification because capacity means how we, do stuff, and capital means our access to resources. And so when we talk about social capital, we're talking about networks and relationships, people who open doors for you, people who, drop in a good word for you, sponsor you, mentor you, that sort of thing. So I just needed to be sure that we were clear about what it was we were talking about. Anyone else? I mean, my little stalking exercise, suggested that people are grappling. A huge pain point is visibility.
I think in our group,
Sanjay.
We also talk about having objectives clear, and we also realize that we had to have numbers, data, like have clear numbers of what we want to achieve in terms of translating the goal to objectives. That was one. Second, we felt that the problems we had with our communication plan was mainly about how to reach people who will be interested in our activities. To get momentum and to get support from stakeholders and collaborators. But as you said, also to get visibility. And my dear colleague from Philanthropy was telling me, she was also looking at collaboration for research papers. So maybe sometimes in terms of research and publishing of research, it's quite difficult because we don't do a lot of research in Africa. Maybe we are all into actions, but who is going to collect all that information and put it in on a report or a paper, and which could be used as a learning opportunity to others. So that is also one of the problems that one of my colleagues was facing.
Okay, Brian, you've got your hand raised. I'm going to come to you. As we work through the exercise, please, for those of you with, seemingly difficult problems, like what Sanjay's just said about the research, Barbara, what you were telling me about your organization, hopefully as we go along, you'll volunteer, so that we see what we can workshop in this space in the moment. That you can take away with you. Is that all right? Okay, great. So Brian?
Thank you so much.
I'll stop at Brian and then go ahead.
Thank you so much. From my group, the one challenges I noticed the members were facing is in terms of data again, as Sanjay is saying, and the question we kept asking ourselves is, how do we collect this data? And so we came up with this solution of, as business people, our people working in different social entrepreneurs, our organizations, the first thing we need to do is map out, do ecosystem mapping and understand what's happening. And then at the same time, because if you go out there to funders, they want to understand, if you're working with women, how many of those women have benefited from this program? If you're working with children, how many of them would you say are success stories? And how are you integrating them back to society? So that was one of the challenges we faced. And also something else was more or less in terms, how do we ensure that all are working in the same mindset in an organization? So in terms of communication, how do we ensure that everyone is aligned to what the goals of the organization are, and how do we see to it that things are able to move forward? Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Let's close it here and move on, and we'll get a different round of people contributing after the next set of inputs, because we're workshopping our communication plan. So we're done with this. So the next slide, please. Okay, so some of you have already started talking about this when you talk about, reaching out to beneficiaries, potential collaborators, funders, volunteers. These are people, as we understand them in layperson's terms. And Cherry, next slide, please. But for us within the communication world, they are audiences, okay? And there are multiple audiences that we are trying to reach. And sometimes we have primary audiences, and sometimes we have, secondary audiences. And the questions we're going to work our way through, and you can take a screenshot of this because we're going to workshop through some of these questions as we go along. We're going to talk about our audience. We're going to get to know them. You know how in marketing they say, competent, person, or, this sort of person, between the ages of 18 to 20, they're digitally focused, they care about what they're addressing and what their peers say. But if you're over 40, you want comfortable shoes and you want a cup of tea, that sort of thing. We get to know our audiences. And to get to know our audiences, we ask ourselves the questions that we have here. For some people, I might be a credible messenger, but for some people, I might not be a credible messenger. Cherry might be more credible because she's younger than I am, or Wando might be more credible because maybe she's more energetic than I am. Do you see? So we're getting into the mind of our primary audience and our secondary audience. So let's go through this. Next slide, please. So from the target, or from the exercise that we've just come from, we've identified a couple of target audiences: collaborators, potential funders, potential volunteers. What else did I hear? Beneficiaries, and people within the ecosystem. So on your sheet of paper where you'd started making notes about your organization's communication objectives and the problem you're trying to resolve, think about your target audience, okay? And make a note. And if you can, please put it in the chat box about who your primary audience is. If you have multiple audiences, indicate who your secondary and tertiary audiences might be. All right? So I have an example there because I started something that had to do with career guidance. And I was working with young people. And when I was doing this exercise for myself, for my organization, my target audience, my primary audience was children. Yeah? And so we then come to the question of who and what influences this audience. And for my target audience, it was their parents, it was their peers, it was their siblings, it was their school environment, it was the media. So for your audiences, primary, there you go, Kim, primary children, yes, teachers, principals, counselors, parents, superintendents, okay, friends don't, okay. Debbie, social entrepreneurs, secondary, governments, donors, private sector, academics, okay? Okay. Let's go. Who would like us to workshop their organization and their audiences? Okay, I can't see. So could someone just jump in so that we can workshop?
You can start with mine.
Great, Gladys.
Gladys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
excellent.
Chloe,
Thank you.
Chloe
so who's
also
your primary
mentioned.
audience? Okay, thank you. Gladys, who's your primary audience?
My primary audience are girls, are
What
middle
age?
school and high school girls.
How old are they?
Middle, I would say from 10 years and above.
Okay, so shall we say 10 to 18, 10 to 16?
10 to 18, yes.
10 to 18. Okay, so who and what influences them?
What do you mean, what influences them?
Who do they listen to? Who do they think is cool?
Oh, their friends.
Friends, who else?
Definitely their friends, sometimes their teachers, and I think a little percentage is their parents.
Parents, okay.
Maybe their siblings.
Maybe siblings, parents, siblings. Okay. We'll do this concurrently. Chloe, let's take yours.
You know
Who is
what?
your
Social media.
and social media? Gladys, I'll come back to you. We're going to work through yours and Chloe's concurrently. Okay. Chloe?
So we work with young people in between the age of 15 to 25 years old.
Chloe. And what do you do with them?
We equip them with skills and tools for work and entrepreneurship.
Okay, work and entrepreneur. So who are their who influences them?
So we have two communities that we specifically serve. So we look out for young people in vocational schools here in Uganda. So sometimes, the influence of the youth in vocational schools are their instructors or teachers.
Anyone else?
And then the other group of youth that work with other youth in the communities. So it's usually the guardians or parents.
Okay, great. So Cherry, go to the next slide, please. So what kind of messages and messengers do they respond to? And we started getting into that. Gladys, you said that they're influenced by their teachers, parents, siblings, social media. And so when we now start the message development, we now ask ourselves, what kind of messages will they respond to? These are young people, Chloe and Gladys, that you have, but they're different people. They might be in vulnerable circumstances, but the messaging might be different. So Gladys, if we came to one of your young girls and wagged our fingers in their faces and said, you know, young lady, you are an embarrassment to society, get yourself together, would that be effective?
No, I think that would be contrary to what we want to achieve.
It's okay, exactly. So they don't respond to, you know, messages critical and judgmental. So what kind of messages do they need to hear in order to shift, to move along in the way that you want them to?
I think the best way to reach to them is being related to a story that relates to them.
Related story. So for instance, if an older person, a mentor type person came and said, I used to be you.
Correct.
But I focused on my studies.
Correct. I was you and everybody said that I would fail, but guess what? Now I am this, this, and this.
Yes, okay, so storytelling, right?
Yes, storytelling and with stories that can, that they can relate to.
Okay, so we have relatable mentors, because now what we're doing is messages and messengers, right? So messages is relational, okay? And we're saying that messengers need to be relatable adults. Please mute whoever that is. Thank you. So let's park that for a minute, Gladys. Let's go to Chloe. Because Chloe, you gave us two sets of young people in vocational schools and those in communities, right?
Yes.
If we were to take the ones in vocational schools, what kind of, you say that they're influenced by their instructors. So how
Yes.
do their instructors need to engage with them in order for the vocational, for these young people to listen to them?
Okay. So for these two group of young people, in the same kind of situation, just that the one in the communities have dropped out of school due to different circumstances. And those that are in the vocational school, here in Uganda, there's a perception that by the time they send you to the vocational school, you have failed. So it's both we're looking at message of hope, where we want the key people that interact with these young people are giving them a message of hope that, you know what, despite that you have not gone through maybe university or gone through the mainstream kind of education, there is hope for you to either earn a living or earn an income through starting an enterprise or getting done with your vocational education and be able to, you know, get into a workplace.
So Chloe, what I'm hearing you say is that both groups of people have self-esteem issues.
Yes, yes.
Which is probably true for Gladys's group as well. Because like in most, and this is true for the rest of Africa, vocational is not ideal. We're taught to believe that you're only successful if you make it into university and you go to a job, you know, where you wear a suit and drive a fancy car.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so there's a sense in which your audience, your young people, would also benefit from relational storytelling.
Yes.
You know, relatable adults. Say for instance, you know, Bob Collymore here in Kenya, who, you know, was the highest paid CEO in Kenya, because he was head of, he's late now, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he didn't go to university, he just started working and worked his way up. So it's that sort of storytelling and that sort of messenger. Be credible messages for some of these people. It might be that you could find people within the media. These are young people who are impressed by celebrities, influencers, and not the influencers who are bragging about, you know, the latest iPhone or their holiday to Dubai or wherever it is, but influencers who are real about their start in life. I mean, there are DJs here in Kenya who talk about going abroad and scrubbing toilets and saving enough money to buy the equipment to come back and launch their DJ careers. So you understand what we're doing here. We're developing the messages and we're finding messengers who resonate with these people. Is that clear to everyone? And we'll stay with Gladys and Chloe. It might be that you focus on the instructors to say that your children, you know, the people in your care have self-esteem issues. They might be coming from difficult family situations. And so we will give you some basic psychosocial training so that if there's a problem, we recognize it early. Do you see?
Yes.
Okay. So Cherry, next slide, please. We started talking about this. What kind of media platforms do they respond to? Say, for instance, I got so frustrated with the media, I don't really consume much media anymore. So my media consumption habits don't apply to your young people. Debbie, if we could take your example of your audiences.
So with Catalyst 2030 is not only do we have our primary audience is the social entrepreneurs, but then donors, etc. And the media platforms is interesting because everyone from different parts of the world have different platforms that they pay attention to.
Okay, and so for someone like Debbie, okay, so whereas with Chloe and with Gladys, we might be focusing on social media. And remember, social media is huge. So I'm more active on Twitter and LinkedIn. TikTok confuses me. But for the audiences that Gladys and Chloe are dealing with, you might want to focus on TikTok and Instagram. Do you see? Mm-hmm. Right? But for Debbie's audience, Debbie is thinking newspapers, radio, okay? New York Times, BBC, Washington Post, you know, wherever her people are. Michael, are you laughing at me?
No, it's the comment that Sanjay said is he said, my students always told me that only us old people use Facebook. So we're all joking with, because the older audience, like I want to use Facebook for community, LinkedIn from a business perspective, you know, but you're right. There's TikToks for the young people, Instagram, they love photos.
And Snapchat. Okay. No, Michael, I was joking. It's just people make fun of me and my inability to get my head around TikTok and Snapchat. You know, so, you know, there was a moment, I was having a senior moment, essentially. My birthday was yesterday and just, you know, I was having a moment. So you understand what's going on. Oh, thank you. So you understand what's going on. Debbie and I might consume the same media, all right? But Gladys and Chloe would really need to be, you know, on Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, you know, with the captions and the this and the that in order to reach their audiences. Are we together? Mm-hmm. Hey, Sanjay. Yes. Happy birthday. Okay, great. So all of this, you're making a note of this as you go along. Please make sure you're making a note of this as you go along. Next slide, please. So now you're going to answer some questions. And if we could have people get back into groups, they don't have to be the same groups, but this is what you're going to do. You're going to discuss the audiences as we've been doing and help each other, all right, answer these questions. When are they most receptive to influence? And the when question is important because, say for instance, people like, I'll stereotype myself and Debbie to say that, you know, we either wake up and turn on the news, or it's the last thing we listen to before we go to bed, okay? And so if you want to reach me or Debbie, you know, you have to think morning or late night, okay? So you're looking at your target audience and you're thinking when. And what would negatively impact their perception of your organization and your message? And Gladys, we had to go with this. When I asked you about the wagging fingers and, you know, do better, get yourself together and, you know, you're a failure and you're this and you're the other. For Chloe, for you, it's, you know, someone walking past the school and saying, well, these are the ones who did not have money to go to proper school. Do you understand? So what would negatively impact the perception of your organization and your message? Think about ads that have failed, you know, or things that people have said to you that have not landed well. This is what's happening. Put yourself in the mind of your audience. What could I say to them that would put them off? And then what resources do you need? So if you were hiring me as your comms advisor, and I've just said here to the whole world that I can't use TikTok, am I the right person for you? I don't think so. You know, so you're thinking, what resources do you need? Do you need a comms officer? Do you need someone who is adept at TikTok? Do you need a TikTok account? Do you need to invest in an agency that does all of this stuff for you? Do you need me, you know, where I do other things for you and somebody else does the TikTok? What do you need? Okay. And what could get in your way? What obstacles would you face? Is it that you don't have the money, your staff aren't trained, you know, you hire the wrong people? You know, what resources do you need? What could get in your way? Okay? So away you go.
very exciting content that we've been sharing. And I love the question that the team and that we said, which is most receptive to influence. And people really said, wow, this is something interesting that I haven't thought about. So Ms. Uduak, over to you.
Well, since you're speaking, Wando, you were in a group. Could you share with us what came out of your group?
So people had the thinking behind what is influence and what could trigger. And I use the word trigger for them to kind of make it a little bit more receptive. And some people said they've had some success with LinkedIn and shared that people seem to be less, very more open, or it's more educational. So there was less a communication tool that they used to influence. And I also explained to them that sometimes the target audience could be timing. It could be of importance, like the way the messaging is, or visual led, and some less people are more accepted when they see a nice picture or a nice video. So we kind of had those discussions to sort of break down what the barriers were. And so that was kind of interesting.
Okay, there was a group, Jennifer, with the HIV testing. Is Jennifer still with us? We've lost a couple of people.
Oh, yes, yes. I'm here now.
Okay, excellent. So Jennifer, you were talking about your group. Please tell us about your target audience and how, you know, how they fit into the questions we asked. Are they receptive to influence, what could come between you and them, and what resources you'd need?
Okay,
Somebody needs to. I will move.
Hello, so I was saying my target audience are adolescents and young people between the ages 15 to 24 for us. Yeah, so our project is on HIV self-testing and helping more people to access self-test kits so they can know their status. Yes. So in our breakout session, I talked about how the use of peer educators using young people to reach young people has been very much beneficial, because young people are willing to talk to and trust people like them. Yes, and then leveraging on social media to reach more people. Yes, and for resources, I said we need more influencers for large scale engagement so we can reach more people, because so far it's been peer-to-peer and there's a limit to how many persons a single person that is just meeting people physically can do. So we're trying to get social media influencers to collaborate with so we can reach more young people. And yes, better social media presence by using high quality media files, high quality pictures, high quality videos, and also content that is engaging. For one, I've tried out using getting young people to do polls, and that so far has been the most engaging content on our social media. Yes, because I feel they were happy that they were engaged, they were involved, and it helped with the flow. Yes, so I think we need to do more of that. So for that, we just need to invest more in skills and better cameras. Yes, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much. I chose you because of your comprehensive responses to the questions. And I did hear some other comprehensive responses to the questions, but we're at time, I think. And so, Cherry, if we go to the next slide. So what's the plan? So by now you should have worked out, next slide. So by now you should have worked out that we've been creating a comms plan. This is what we've done. It's been a technical session, and we've put together what you should have in your notes is a draft, an outline of a communications plan. And so what would typically happen is that you'll put all of these things together. You would, write sentences, you'd string them into a narrative to make them make sense. That this is who we're targeting, this is how we're going to target them. We will reach them at this point, and we will do so, with these sorts of messages, with these sorts of messaging rather. And so you string that all up into a 1-page, 2-page, 3-page document. You can make it visual. But what is key here is evaluating. You may have seen that this session is being evaluated. You would also need to evaluate your communications plan because it's a living document. You tweak it. So for instance, you heard Jennifer saying that peer educators work very well. Now, because she's working with young people between the ages of 15 and 24, I might not be a very credible educator. And so if she were to recruit people like myself or Debbie, and evaluate whether we were landing as messengers, she might find that no one shows up when Debbie and Uduak are scheduled to talk. But when, Wando and Cherry are scheduled, or Carla are scheduled to speak, people show up, which was certainly what my experience with my career guidance, my career days. When we showed up, they thought we were ancient and had no time for us. But when we got university mentors come and talk to them about being in university and what university was like, my young people in secondary schools were very, very receptive. So you're evaluating that. You heard Jennifer talk about quality images. I'm a trained, broadcast journalist, so I take pictures and videos. And I mean, we've all been we've all seen things, videos, images that are, slightly, wonky when you're watching a video and your head is going like this, because the picture is shaky. And so if this is what it feels like to be in a cinema hall or in a movie theater, why would anyone, including your beneficiaries, want poorly put together images? Why would they respond to that? Do you see? A lot of the time when we're doing this sort of work, we think that, or there's a feeling that we can scrimp on quality production, images, writing. I'm the sort of person who notices typos. I notice a typo or something and I can't read. Oh my goodness, there's a typo, so that would not land with me, okay, if I were the audience. So you've got to put yourselves in the mind of your target audience to figure out what works for them and what won't work for them. And you cannot, and part of the work we do, especially because we are working on the SDGs, dignity, in terms of our communication and our communication planning. What does dignity look like in terms of our messages, our messaging, in terms of our resourcing, in terms of how we do this? Because very often people say, oh, well, you're doing them a favor, they get what they get. And I would caution that that is wrong, okay? We need to think about dignity and offering our communication activities in a dignified manner, okay? So I'll leave it at that because we are at time, and I'll hand back to the team at Catalyst. Thank you for your attention.
Great. We are so full with information, with tips, with techniques, and really the sharing. And really, Uduak, you were actually the facilitator and moderator. And I want to thank you personally for that. Thank you for the learnings and for being open and sharing those personal experiences. So everybody should definitely put in the chat group any insights, question, tension, or even thoughts they're thinking. If you can go to the next slide. Quickly, I would just like to highlight some lessons learned. Communicate your objectives through storytelling. And I really like the way she was making them actionable. Positive messages, very instrumental, especially identifying your messengers who will be heard and make that relatable, and the framing of your messaging. And also watch out for negative perceptions. And this is a good way to segment. Always watch your back is what UDUAC is saying. Catalyst 2030 is an organization that is growing across various countries. We're about 1,700 organizations. So learn more about it. Go on our website, go on our social media channels, on LinkedIn, join us. We're here to collaborate, to serve, and to communicate and support the SDGs and accelerate the process. And so you won't be alone. We have several sessions coming up. Please register for our Africa Forward session event coming up on Thursday. We have some exciting speakers. And within the Catalytic Learning series, we have also wanted you to share some feedback. We also have fundraising masterclass coming up in November. So please, please, please don't forget to sign up and keep informed. So join us, fill out the feedback forms because this will help us to shape more conversations. But we have an amazing speaker who's going to talk about philanthropy and funding and the best way to approach it when communicating. So thank you for the team. Thank you, Cherry. Special thanks to UDUAC for being here, for being so special with all her time. We thank you and we don't take it for granted. Who have actually messaged me about creating a Google website. Somebody in has asked for my email. So if anybody else who has some interests, who wants to create websites and wants to learn and share with others, please feel free to do though as well. I think we're done. So please follow us, share, like, post, and all the things you learned about today, because sharing is caring. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a good afternoon, evening.